Return, O Virgin Daughter of Israel, to these your highways by which you went. Welcome to Reunion Roadmap, a place to discover the people and communities along the highway of restoration for Israel's house of Joseph. Reunion Roadmap is a B'nai Yosef North America production. Be our guest for the next hour as we meet the people of the emerging house of Joseph here in North America.
Welcome to another edition of the Reunion Roadmap. This is Al McCarn, Executive Director, B'nai Yosef North America, along with my friend and colleague, Stefania Pappas, our Communications Director. And we're just going to launch into who we're talking to today. Stefania, who is our guest?
We are going to be talking to Luke and Harmony Patterson. They were speaking to us from Louisiana at the time, but they're very much sojourners, and it's quite an interesting story.
Yeah, Covington, Louisiana, to be precise. Fascinating interview. These folks have lived in Norway and Israel and Texas and Idaho and California, and all the while homeschooling their kids and following Yeshua and growing in his Torah.
Now, they have not actually lived in Israel, but they kind of have lived in Israel, though, in a sense, because they're the type that when they go somewhere, they actually try to not necessarily be a tourist. They try to really get a feel for what it's like to live there, kind of like.
How did you meet Luke and Harmony?
I met them before the Pesach, I think it was, before the Pesach gathering, but I know it was through Blair and Linda, because they're the ones that invited them to the Pesach celebration that we had at the Abraham Hostel.
Okay, so you met Luke and Harmony at the Abraham Hostel in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And it was Blair and Linda Wetmore who introduced you.
Yes. And there was immediate rapport with them, because what happened is they would fellowship with Blair and Linda up in Canada. I realized the reason why I connected with the Pattersons so well is having to do with the Wetmore connection. I mean, Blair and Linda are just really nice people. So
they are. They're awesome people.
Yeah.
So fascinating interview.
Yeah.
And then after that, we have music of Lenny and Varda, music of Yvette Adonai, and another midrash by our elders, Barry Phillips and David Jones, this time talking about a life of worship. So we got another fascinating program today.
Yes, we do indeed.
We are over halfway counting the Omer for this year and building toward Shavuot. So maybe we should just go listen to the Pattersons, and that will set the stage for the rest of the show. How about that?
Sounds good to me.
All right, off we go to Covington, Louisiana to hear Luke and Harmony Patterson.
Welcome to the interview portion of Reunion Roadmap. I'm Stefania Pappas, Communications Director, and we have with us Luke and Harmony Patterson. I would probably ask where you're hailing from right now, but I'll say that you're sojourners and you wait for the Father to send you different places, which is really makes this, I think, interview is going to be kind of exciting, because it's important for people to be able to have a different understanding of what's going on in different parts of the United States or the world even, too. And you do have kind of a story in there. But first of all, could you both just introduce yourself to our audience?
Certainly. My name is Luke Patterson. I am joined with my wife, Harmony. And we are currently in Louisiana, southern Louisiana, which is in many ways a place that continues to call us back. We have family here in Louisiana, so we do spend time here in Louisiana, but over the last 12 years we've spent less and less time, because we have found ourselves traveling around the U.S. and around the world. So Harmony and I have 4 children. 2 were born here in Louisiana. 2 were born in Texas. And we've been married going on 17 years this year. We actually met in high school in California. She walked across the quad there, and that was pretty much the end of it for me, or I should say the beginning, as the Lord put upon my heart a desire to pursue my bride. I guess we've always say it was we were high school sweethearts, but we have to also preface that without, at the time, without an understanding of who our true bridegroom is and what it means to actually be a bride of our Messiah Yeshua, we were really missing some points early on. But he's been very gracious to us. He has walked with us in our life, in our marriage. He has made himself evident to us and around us. So we're always amazed at how faithful he is to us. So I will say that even in our life, we have seen restoration and renewal in our own marriage. And I think we've been very grateful for that. And as we sojourn around the world, we see a need for people to be reminded of that. And I guess that's where I would start in some ways. Harmony?
Yeah. We also have 4 children who we homeschool, and they've homeschooled in several countries, and they have been on the Torah walk with us. We just celebrated our 8th Pesach as a family, and they've been 100% on the journey with us, excited about the learning, encouraging, keeping us on the path, and that's been really amazing and totally the Father's hand.
So, what is your profession? I mean, people are probably curious. They hear that you're. How does one accomplish this when they're a sojourner?
Yeah.
Really, only by the Father's will. Luke worked very hard throughout school, getting his master's degree, and had a job before he even graduated college as a geologist. He spent 1 week and he came back and he said, I cannot do this for 30 years. He went from loving rocks and the beauty of God's creation to sitting behind a desk. And one year before we found Torah, we were on a road trip, and I said, wow, wouldn't it be so awesome? I said, you have such a heart for people. You love people. You connect with people. Wouldn't it be awesome if we could just travel full time and minister to people? And he said, well, that's great, but what do you do for a living? And I said, I have no clue. I have no idea. And really, when the Father started pressing on our hearts that this was what we should do, we were going to sell everything, live in a trailer, and just figure it out. But he made a way, miraculously, moving us around the world through Luke's job to get out of debt that prepared us. And our love for just his creation led us to Young Living essential oils, and we found that those were just the best wellness arsenal that we could find that was not chemical, nothing else bad for our bodies. And so we just went full throttle for ourselves, but our love for people had us literally giving them away, not selling them. I was not interested in selling them because at this time his work was moving us around the world and we were happy. But the Father just made a way and opened up people's hearts all over that we had given oils to start the business. And when we were in Canada, a desire to help some friends financially encouraged me that, hey, let's do some education events together so that I can help you earn income. And that's really been the biggest blessing, is that we've been able to pour out his blessing to other people, but also if somebody needed help financially, that we could open a door for them to earn some income as well.
Yeah, I'll just add. So just my summary is, as Harmony mentioned, in many ways, 10 years as a geologist in oil and gas exploration. And it's in many ways an outstanding career. I was, from day one, it's a relatively high income position, a lot of opportunities. And as Harmony mentioned, I wasn't particularly satisfied with sitting inside an office, which is what a geologist does in the oil and gas realm, seismic interpretation in particular. But I stuck it out for 10 years. And during that 10 years, we went from desiring to be consumers of the world. And with that, we never had enough. It was an insatiable appetite to consume and have more. It was about the time we began to turn towards Shabbat that the Lord pressed upon our hearts that the consumers of this world aren't always very blessed. So we started to make some big changes in our home to consume less, and he began to plant a new seed of, okay, let's get out of this corporate consumer lifestyle. And when that happened was actually when we moved to Norway and then Canada. And at that same time, he blessed us financially even greater. We were able to claw ourselves out of debt, which is a story in itself and one we desired to never return to. And he also gave us a new opportunity through the use of Young Living essential oils, which is a story in itself because it's a tool to promote wellness physically, but also emotionally, mentally. And we believe when in connection with the desire to cry out before the Lord, there's some spiritual healing that can take place. Now, we are not great marketers of these oils outside of one-on-one personal relationship, sharing this toolkit. And Harmony is just blessed to be able to share with compassion and love towards people in this realm. So she does a lot of that. We do a lot of that. But I should add as well that we homeschool our children. Harmony has been the primary educator. Recently, I've taken on more of a role because I've been home. 2 years, June, I will have resigned from oil and gas, and we've been even more nomadic than we were, which allows us now to travel the United States. We've been on a reconnaissance mission since we've returned to the U.S. looking for a new home base. We haven't found one. We spend a lot of time in northern Idaho, which is where we hope to return later this year. In the meantime, we are everywhere in between. Families in southern Louisiana, which is where we are now. We're soon on our way to Texas, Colorado, and we even have a high school reunion occurring on the West Coast in California this summer. So we'll be doing a quick tour through California and then back north.
How did it all start for both of you meeting the bridegroom?
I'd say it was a culmination of a lot of things happening at the same time. A culmination of us not being satisfied in a church and church hopping every week. And we had our 4 young kids, and Sunday became a big stressor. So we started to do home church and just say, let's do church in the home and start reading the word, and started really digging into our word as a couple, which we had committed to doing that throughout our marriage, but really when we weren't relying on a pastor or a church to feed us, really needing the word to feed us. We're also on a big health journey. Our son was having some behavioral issues and skin issues at the same time. And the Father really put on my heart that I had done enough research, but that it was time to stop research, but to read the word. So when we started reading the word for diet, I was, of course, led to the Torah. And we just said, hey, if this is wisdom, then I want to listen to this above Dr. So-and-so or Dr. So-and-so, because they have conflicting ideas. So let's go first to the wisdom of the word for what we should be eating. And then everything else can kind of hinge off of that. Because there's a lot of, in the natural health world, there's a lot of conflicting opinions on what's good for you and what's bad for you. But we came to the realization if the creator of these animals and these meats and food gave us wisdom and instruction, then we ought to listen to that first. So, he revealed our eyes during that time to the Shabbat. And as we looked into it and we realized it wasn't Sunday, and even if it was Sunday, we were never using it as a Shabbat, but that it was Saturday, and really moved all of our hearts as a family to commit to keeping Shabbat, sundown Friday to sundown Saturday. And from there, the path really became clear and easy. And we started looking at the Torah as just loving instructions, a roadmap, how to navigate this life when it can be so confusing and there's so many different inputs that we can get on what to follow and what to do, so that everything else hinges off of that.
And so how many years into your walk with Yeshua, I assume you knew him as Jesus initially, about how many years into that when you had a Torah awakening?
Well, we just celebrated our 8th Pesach. In many ways, that's kind of a milestone for us, because before that, we didn't even know what Pesach was. I mean, we may have heard the term Passover. You read about it, during the Exodus, but we had no concept of it. We certainly didn't have a realization that it was really pointing towards our true Passover lamb. So 8 years for us, 8 years ago from this Pesach just passed, was a time that Harmony mentioned we really began to turn away from a lot of the previous traditions that had been deeply embedded in our life, and I will say deeply embedded in the generations before us. And we began to decide that we wanted to take a different path. So I'd say 8 years of really turning towards, I think, what we consider a real kind of biblical exodus in our own life. And we really say that, literally almost, in the sense that we were deeply embedded in what we called a modern Babylonian culture here in America. And we just kind of decided that we wanted out. And it began to get kind of radical for us. Harmony mentioned the dietary side. Well, it may not sound radical, but when all of a sudden you feel like you can't go to your modern grocery store and have much success. So we began to look for alternatives there dietarily, obviously observing the biblical holidays that looked very different. Just guarding Sabbath. People still to this day can scratch their head. I mean, for us, we realize that that's just a simple act of love and obedience. So it's been kind of 8 years of, I'd say, taking a bit of a leap and a big turn.
I think he was asking before that, though, our Christian walk, how many years into our Christian walk did we come to Torah? Yeah. And my parents were saved when I was 6. They had kind of gone through a very hippie kind of lifestyle, and their marriage was on the brink. And so at about 6, they started bringing me into the church. And I remember, going to small groups and hearing this. So the word was implanted on my heart at an early age, but it was a little bit confusing because I was under the impression that I could kind of do whatever I wanted as long as I asked for forgiveness in the end. And so that led to quite a reckless teenage years that was quite destructive had not the Father's hand been upon my life, protecting and preserving me. So when we started learning the truth about Torah, I realized that that's really what was missing in our Christianity, because without for that, and there are certain things the Christian church teaches from the Torah, such as, tithing and not to have sex before marriage, but without a foundation that the whole law is important and good for us, it leads to confusion. And so I'd say that I was a confused Christian for, I guess, 20 plus years. And then Father started opening our eyes that there was a set apart path, that there was a narrow gate that we desired to enter.
Lenny and Varda join us now singing 12 Tribes of Israel from their album The Vision, available at lennyandvarda.com.
Let's go up to Zion, to the house of Adonai. Go up to Jerusalem, to the mountain of the Lord. Let's go up to Zion, to the house of Adonai. Go through the gates, prepare the way for the people. Build up the highway, take out the stones. Lift up a banner for the peoples. Lift up a banner for the peoples. Every tongue and tribe and nation, come join in the celebration. Let's march hand in hand to Jerusalem. Every tongue and tribe and nation, come join in the celebration. Let's march hand in hand in Yeshua's name. Let's march hand in hand in Yeshua's name. 12 tribes of Israel go through the gates. 12 tribes of Israel go through the gates. Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Yisachar, Zvulun, Yosef, Binyamin. Go up to Jerusalem, to the mountain of the Lord. Let's go up to Zion, to the house of Adonai. Go through the gates, prepare the way for the people. Build up the highway, take out the stones. Lift up a banner for the peoples. Lift up a banner for the peoples. Every tongue and tribe and nation, come join in the celebration. Let's march hand in hand to Jerusalem. Every tongue and tribe and nation, come join in the celebration. Let's march hand in hand in Yeshua's name. Let's march hand in hand in Yeshua's name. 12 tribes of Israel go through the gates.
Hello and welcome to the Midrash portion of today's Reunion Roadmap. Barry Phillips here along with David Jones. We serve as elders for B'nai Yosef of North America. David, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Barry. I'm looking forward to what we're getting into today.
Well, we had a few moments to kind of put our heads together and see where we might want to go. For those who are not aware, the midrashes are not necessarily well planned out well in advance to where we've studied for hours and hours on end. A lot of this is somewhat spontaneous, and I like it that way. It keeps it fresh and hopefully interesting. We are aware that many of our audience worship or gather, especially on Shabbat, in small groups. Many of you are either an individual or, two or three gathered in his name in a living room around a kitchen table. And so you may feel like, well, we don't have the opportunity to get involved in quote unquote worship the way that maybe a congregation does. For House of David, where I teach, and I know at Ruach Ministries, where David's at, music is a very large part of the gathering experience. And it does opportune a meaningful engagement of dance and celebration and song and so forth. And I'm very thankful for that. But David, is the act of singing, dancing, playing music, waving flags, etc., is that in and of itself actually worship?
That is a really great question and way to pose something, because music in and of itself is a tool. It can be used for many different things. So just because you're playing a song, even if it's a song of a character leaning towards scripture, if you're just learning the song, is that in and of itself just worship, or are you just learning the song? I mean, so there's this point in here where there's got to be more to it than the technical aspect of it. And I think it really shows the heart behind it. And I think that when we're worshiping, do we have to have music to worship? And I think we get stuck in mindsets.
Yes, we do.
And exactly. And this is the way I've seen it. This is what feels right to me. And this is the way we've always done it. So therefore, I'm going to conclude this is the way it has to be done. And it's not always the case. Don't get me wrong. I love to worship in music, through music. I love to do that. But that's not the only way a person worships the Almighty. I mean, when Yeshua came to his Talmidim and they bowed down before him, did they bow down and break into a full orchestra?
The Hallelujah chorus.
Did they break out the drums and the guitars and start, a song of, how great thou art? I mean, just if we get stuck in the mindset of, well, you have to be singing to worship, I think we're really losing some connection there that we could have.
Well, I'm wondering about Rav Shaul, the Apostle Paul's words in Romans 12. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of Elohim, that ye present your bodies or your lives as a living offering unto him, holy and acceptable, which is your reasonable act of worship. Walking in a life of obedience, reverence, recognizing that we live for him and for him alone, living sacrificially. That is a reasonable act of worship. So, there's not necessarily any music involved. There's not necessarily any dance involved, although you could obey him in doing so. But if one walks uprightly, righteously, and seeks to honor him with their daily living, according to that text, what they're doing is presenting to him a life of worship. David, the reason I bring this out is I'm thinking about those that are in small gatherings, very isolated situations, and they may feel like, if I don't put on a CD or a tape or go to the internet and bring up some form of music, and we spend some time listening to the music, then we're not worshiping. I shared with you earlier, when I was a kid, still in church, we had a pastor that after the choir had sung, which was, we're going to worship him in music, he would say, we're going to worship the Lord in giving. And they would receive the offering. And then he would announce, no, we're going to worship him in the preaching of the word. And he would proceed then to deliver the word that he had been given for that particular gathering. So in your acts of giving, in your acts of celebration and dance and music, in your act of studying the word, that is worship. So one that is gathered even by themselves, and they're doing Shabbat all by themselves in their home, whether you put on some music or not, if you're reading and studying the word and seeking to encounter him in that process, I believe that the Father sees that as an act of worship. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very well said. Worship involves everything that we are, and we even say, let's worship him with everything that we are and everything that we have. But that's not just in our voice or just in a dance. And I'm by no means are we downplaying songs and dancing and worship and the banners, and that's awesome. I love it. And at the same time, we can get stuck on the other side of it. Says, well, if you're not reading and studying the word, then you're not worshiping. And I think we need to see a point where all of this comes together and comes to play in our life. I think it's a matter of you do what you are capable of doing and do it unto him. And I think that's a life of worship. Everything that you do is to honor him. And isn't that part of worship, to give honor?
It is. I think that when you boil the idea of worship down to its root essence, it is recognizing his sovereignty and finding a means of bringing an encounter of him into your realm. I love what the rabbinical mindset teaches about that the purpose that we have been given in the earth is that Yah would be diffused through us into our environment, so that we not only are aware of him, but those that are around us become aware of him. I think Yeshua very much was teaching the same concept when he was talking about that his light is inside of us, and it doesn't need to be hidden, but rather thrust out into the darkness so that all those in darkness would benefit from that light. So he said, I am the light of the world. But then he looked at us and said, and you are the light of the world. So that encountering of him and then allowing him to be revealed through us is an act of worship. It is acknowledging him, encountering him, and sharing him.
And, we got to be careful that we don't allow our worship to be geared towards those around us, even though I agree perfectly with what you said. Our act of worship, and I say act of worship because it is a response. It is a physical thing. It is something that can be tangible.
So you mean you can't just worship him in your heart and there never be an outward expression?
There needs to be some kind of outward expression. I think the problems we get into is when I say your outward expression has to be what I think. But at the same time, we need to make sure we're worshiping the Father, that we're worshiping who we are supposed to be worshiping, and that's not geared toward the people around us. It's kind of like, I need to act this way, or other people who are watching aren't going to think I'm worshiping. I think worship is genuine when it's genuine, and so let it be so. And when we start showing worship so that those around us can identify that as such, we're getting in dangerous areas. We're getting towards areas of performance and getting in things of trying to make something happen, and that's a place I don't think we want to be. We need to make sure that our worship is genuine and it's with our whole heart. It's towards the Father. I had this one lady approach me once, not at Ruach, but it was somewhere else, and said, "So what happens if the people are singing and they sing off key? Involving worship?" And I'm like, what's your point? Are you saying in order to be worship to the Almighty, you have to sing perfect pitch and in key? She goes, well, yeah.
well, there goes that. Now what am I going to do?
So what you're saying is only the professionals who have trained for 50 years can worship then, and that's not the way it is. I'm not saying by any means you have to do everything perfectly in order to worship, but at the same time, we need to let our hearts, I don't want to say we have to wear our hearts on our sleeve, but we need to have that shown to those around us.
So have we worshiped if we don't cry?
Yes and no.
Thank you for that definitive answer, David.
That's a good rabbinical response, right? I know people that are touched greatly, and they don't often shed too many tears. And there are other people that I know who really don't do much physically, but you look over and you'll see them. They're crying. You pull a handkerchief and they're wiping away tears and stuff. And it's like it's different with different people. You know, kind of like, well, if you're not dancing, you're not worshiping. Okay. What if you're in a situation like me where you just had knee surgery? You know, we need to be careful we don't lock in that worship has to be done exactly like this. Rather, let everything be done out of a heart of worship and towards our Father. Let everything that we do be honorable to Him. Why? Scripture so that people can see your good deeds and glorify our Father in heaven.
You know, David, I was sharing with you earlier that I had read an article pertaining to worship, that some of the reasons that people don't respond in a corporate setting of worship with the music presentation, maybe this key of the song that is presented in is not really helpful to most of the audience to sing. It's either too high or too low. And it's like, you know, they're having trouble singing in that particular key. The singer on the platform may be wonderful, but they, you know, it's their voice and their ability, not the audience's. Or the arrangement may be so complicated and from one place to the other that it's hard to follow along and figure out where is this song going next. It may be that the music is either too soft or too loud in its volume for people to engage. And it may be that there are just people out there who don't sing. That's not really what they do. They may enjoy music, but if we're gauging a worship experience success as to how many people are actually singing along, we may not be recognizing in reality as to what's happening. People may be worshiping very deeply, but without singing the words. Not everybody is gifted to dance. Some people would be more apt to trip over your feet than to dance alongside your feet. I can dance, but no one else knows how to dance the way I do. Evidently, it's unique or something. My wife just groans. But, you know, we need to make room and opportunity for a variety of expressions of worship, not just ones that we feel very gifted at ourselves.
I think that's a great way to put it. You know, we need to be able to keep, and I think during a time of if we're actually what we're going to say, what we're going to call a time of worship, I think we need to keep our focus not on the people, not on the ones around us, focus on the one that redeemed us. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where our heart should be, and that's where our heart should stay.
Easier said than done. Sometimes we get all caught up in the mechanics of whether we're, you know, singing, playing, dancing, waving flags, or how we're studying what we're reading and how we're breaking it all down. But living a life of obedience, that's something that everyone can do, and do it with all your heart as unto Him. 15 seconds and close us out, David.
Well, I think we need to just worship the Almighty, and let it be an action that draws those around us into worship Him as well. Not about us, about Him. About Him.
Yeah. Send your questions and comments to, what is it, David? Help me out here. Reunion Roadmap at BeneJosephNA.com.
Our next musical selection is Shake Off, as in Shake Yourself from the Dust and Arise, by Eved Adonai from their album of the same name, available at evedadonai.com.
פנייך עייפות יזע ודמעות בתייך מלאים אבק דרכים ואת פוסעת חרש אוספת את פיסות שברי חיים פזורים בחולות הנערי מעפר קומי לבשי בגדי תפארתך עמי על יבן ישלב בית הלחמי קורבה אל נפשי גאלה עינייך מעידות הלילה בלי שינה לבלך צועק אמא אדמה ואת פוסעת חרש בין חרי גבים תועה אם עוד יבוא הקץ לנדודים התנערי מעפר קומי לבשי בגדי תפארתך עמי על יבן יסף בית הלחמי קורבה אל נפשי גאלה עכשיו כי עמך נצח שוב חוסר אל החולות אל חפיסות אשר חותיר במחובו מיני קולה מבכי בעינייך מדמעה כי יש אחר לפעולתך בנים חוסרים ומפרים את הדממה אשר מילך את יסותך ואת ליבך הנערי מעפר קומי לבשי בגדי תפארתך עמי על יבן ישן בית הלחמי קורבה אל נפשי גאלה הנערי מעפר קומי לבשי בגדי תפארתך עמי על יבן ישב בית הלחמי קורבה אל נפשי גאלה גאלה גאולה 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 Shake yourself from the dust rise up put on your garments of glory my people by the hands of Jishaish the son the Bethlehemite draw near to my soul redeem it redeem it Geula Geula Geula
You've just heard the song Shake Off by Aved Adonai. Speaking of shake off, I really think what our elders were trying to do in dealing with this whole aspect of worship, we have certain ideas that we have in mind, and they were actually getting us to shake those things off and don't let those things cling to us that we think that this is what worship is.
We can so easily get caught in that pattern, not just with worship, but everything else.
Yes.
And that's why I appreciate David and Barry emphasizing a life of worship. I have heard it said that the way Native peoples look on this idea of prayer and worship is everything we do is an act of worship.
Yes.
You know, breathing, every step you take, it's all a prayer to the Creator. Now, music, absolutely, that is one aspect of worship, but I think we do ourselves a disservice when we forget that just sitting in silence and awe of our Creator, that too is part of worship.
It reminds me of, I was in the Christian home fellowship I used to be in, and we're looking at Abraham. And the fact that there's so many mundane activities that one needed to do within that ancient framework of time. You know, you didn't have all the modern conveniences that we have here today. And with that, you literally had to know that everything that you did was worship.
We don't have, or they didn't have, all these instantaneous electronic distractions that we have.
Yes, exactly.
So what are you going to do if you're sitting hours and hours without having Snapchat or Facebook or television or anything like that? Why do we have 150 Psalms in the book of Psalms?
Yes.
One of those reasons is David, as a shepherd, had nothing else to do but contemplate his Creator and his own relationship with his Creator.
Yes.
And that, I think, just the thought process must have been worship.
Absolutely. I think of the whole idea of, being out in creation like that as a shepherd. And, I just think of the aspect, and that's not nearly as probably the beauty that he was looking at, but I go out my back deck in the morning sometimes when it's really quiet and you can hear all the birds, and you just start thinking about different psalms where it's talking about the birds singing their song for him, and just the quietness and listening to the creation even singing.
I recall something that our elder Dr. Tsukina has said. Native peoples will be out in nature, and that's where they experience the Creator, and then they come back inside to report what they have learned.
Yes.
Whereas, and the traditions that you and I were raised in, we're worshiping inside the four walls. Wait a minute, maybe we have gotten it backwards there. Well, that's something we will have to ponder as we go on our way, because we have run out of time once again for this edition of Reunion Roadmap. So thank you all for listening. This is Al McCarn on behalf of Stefania Pappas and our elders Barry Phillips and David Jones. Join us again next week for another edition. Until then, Shavua Tov.
Thank you for joining us on Reunion Roadmap, a production of B'nai Yosef North America. Please come back next week for another visit with the people of the emerging House of Joseph here in North America.